first time Lysandre felt another being's touch without pain, she nearly collapsed. For 217 cycles, the Valine empath had lived in perfect isolation. Her species' hypersensitive dermal receptors made them exceptional, diplomats and healers, able to read emotional states through proximity alone. But Lysandre had been born with a rare genetic anomaly. Her neural pathways interpreted all physical contact as searing agony. The medical diagnosis at age 6 had been delivered without touch, as was every interaction thereafter. Tactile hypersensitivity syndrome, permanent classification. The condition affected fewer than 1 in 10 million Valine. There was no cure. Ambassador Lysandre called Orbital Director Mavith from beyond the customary 3-meter clearance zone. The human delegation has arrived. She nodded, her semi-translucent skin shifting from sea foam to pale lavender, her species' indication of nervous anticipation. Humanity was the newest addition to the Galactic Confederation, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 30 years prior. This diplomatic summit would determine their future role. "How many?" she asked, adjusting her hovering proximity sensors. The devices emitted a soft warning tone if anyone approached too closely, a necessary precaution despite the universal knowledge of her condition. "Just one," replied Mavith, "their chief ambassador, Rael Casimir." Lysandre's brow ridges elevated in surprise. Humans typically traveled in groups, finding comfort in their pack-bonding instincts. A solitary representative was unusual. The airlock cycled open, and a tall figure emerged. Unlike most species who approached the Valine diplomatic corps with reverence or apprehension, this human walked with casual confidence. His dark eyes quickly assessed the chamber before settling on Lysandre. "Ambassador," he said, executing a perfect Valine greeting gesture with his hands positioned exactly the proper distance from his core. "I'm Rael Casimir." Lysandre mirrored the gesture, impressed by his cultural awareness. "Welcome to Valine, Central Station, Ambassador Casimir. I trust your journey was pleasant." "Fascinating would be more accurate," he replied with what Lysandre recognized as a human smile. "Your stellar architecture is remarkable. The way you've constructed habitable spaces between binary stars defies conventional engineering principles. It's based on theories developed during our Third Enlightenment," she explained, noticing how he maintained perfect position outside her proximity field. "Your file indicates you've studied xenoarchitecture?" "Among other disciplines." His gaze remained steady, evaluating. "Though recently I've been exploring comparative neurophysiology." A warning chime interrupted them. A junior aide approaching too quickly had triggered Lysandre's sensors. The young Valine immediately retreated, face flushing deep orange with embarrassment. "Your condition," Casimir said quietly after the aide departed. "I've read about it. Tactile hypersensitivity syndrome." Lysandre's skin rippled momentarily to ash gray, surprise with traces of discomfort. "You've done considerable research on our species." "On you specifically," he corrected. "I requested this assignment." "May I ask why?" Casimir's expression shifted, becoming more intense. "Because humans have something unique to offer the Confederation. We're not the strongest, fastest, or even smartest species. But we possess unparalleled adaptability. We solve problems others have accepted as unsolvable. Including diplomatic ones," Lysandre acknowledged. "Including neurological ones," he countered. "Ambassador, I believe your condition might not be permanent. And I think I can prove it." For the first time in decades, Lysandre felt something beyond diplomatic curiosity, a dangerous flicker of hope. "You're not the first to make such claims," she said carefully. "No," he agreed, "but I'm the first human to try." The conference chamber hummed with the soft sounds of environmental systems as Lysandre studied the data displayed on her console. Casimir sat opposite her, beyond the safety boundary, his calm demeanor belying the revolutionary nature of his proposal. "You're suggesting," she said slowly, "that my condition isn't physiological, but perceptual?" "Not exactly." Casimir manipulated the holographic display between them, highlighting neural pathway comparisons. The pain is real, but its source may not be what your doctors believed. For 3 days they had met like this, exchanging information, building a cautious rapport. The diplomatic negotiations that were supposed to be their primary focus had become secondary to these private sessions. Human medical science is remarkably advanced for such a young spacefaring species, Lysandre observed, her skin shifting to the deep turquoise of intellectual engagement. We had to be, Casimir replied. Our biological diversity forced our medical development to progress differently than most unified species. Where others seek universality, we specialized in individualized treatments. Lysandre examined the neural scans he had presented, her own brain activity compared against typical Valine patterns and, surprisingly, human ones. This similarity between human pain processing and my own abnormal patterns. It's uncanny. Because humans evolved from prey animals, Casimir explained. Our pain responses developed as survival mechanisms, then were moderated through cognitive evolution. Your condition mirrors our ancestral pain processing before we developed cortical override capabilities. A soft alert sounded from Lysandre's communicator. The Jotaki delegation is requesting my presence. We'll need to continue this later. Casimir nodded, gathering his materials. Consider my proposal, Ambassador. A 2-week treatment course. Non-invasive neuromodulation techniques adapted from human therapies. Even if I were inclined to try, she responded, my government would never approve experimental procedures during such a critical diplomatic summit. Then we don't tell them it's experimental. His expression remained serious. We frame it as cultural exchange, humans learning Valine diplomatic protocols while sharing our meditation practices. Deception isn't the Valine way, she said, though her skin betrayed her interest, rippling with flecks of curious gold. Not deception, discretion. He stood, maintaining perfect distance. 217 cycles, Ambassador. How much longer will you wait for a solution that your people haven't found? The question lingered between them as they parted ways. Later, attending to the demanding Jotaki delegates with their blustering territorial claims, Lysandre found her thoughts returning to Casimir's proposal. That evening, she accessed sealed records from her childhood, medical assessments, failed treatments, specialist consultations. One phrase appeared repeatedly throughout the documentation: permanent neural adaptation necessary for survival. Her species had accepted her condition as immutable because the alternative, that they had simply failed to find a solution, was too difficult to acknowledge. The following morning she sent Casimir a secure message. Cultural exchange approved. When do we begin? His reply came seconds later. Now, meet me in Observation Dome 7. Bring nothing but an open mind. When she arrived, she found the dome's transparency set to maximum, offering an unobstructed view of the twin stars their station orbited. Casimir sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed. The first step, he said without opening his eyes, is understanding that pain has purpose. To protect, she replied automatically. To inform, he corrected. Pain is information. Your species evolved to process emotional information through skin contact. Your condition represents an information processing error, but errors can be reprogrammed. How? Finally, he opened his eyes, fixing her with an intense gaze. By teaching your neural pathways a new language. Focus on your breathing, Casimir instructed. 4 counts in, 7 counts hold, 8 counts out. They sat facing each other in the observation dome for the 6th consecutive morning. Outside, the binary stars performed their eternal dance, bathing them in shifting patterns of light. Inside, Lysandre struggled to maintain concentration. This isn't working, she said, her skin flushing vermilion with frustration. We've been attempting these human meditative techniques for a week without progress. Progress isn't always visible, Casimir replied evenly. The neuroplasticity adjustments are subtle. Your scans show changes. Insignificant ones. Lysandre gestured to the monitoring device beside her. The pain threshold readings have barely shifted. Because we're not targeting the pain directly. Casimir adjusted his position, still carefully outside her proximity boundary. We're creating new neural pathways that will eventually bypass the pain response entirely. Lysandre had agreed to. His treatments partly out of scientific curiosity, partly out of diplomatic necessity. The human proposal for joining the Confederation included unprecedented resource-sharing provisions that many older member species viewed with suspicion. Her ability to broker this agreement could define her career, and yet, increasingly, she found herself drawn to these sessions for another reason: Casimir himself. There was something compelling about his unwavering belief in possibility, where others saw only limitation. "Tell me about Earth," she said, seeking distraction from their apparent lack of progress. "What would you like to know?" "Your oceans. We have nothing similar on our homeworld." A smile warmed his features. Imagine standing at the edge of water that stretches beyond sight, the surface constantly moving, breathing almost. When sunlight hits at certain angles, it creates this shimmering path across the waves, like the universe is offering you a road to walk into infinity. His description activated her mind's visual centers, and the biometric monitor chimed softly, registering increased neural plasticity. "That's it," he said, excitement edging his voice. "Your brain responds to immersive sensory imagery. It's creating new pathways. How can visualizing water help my condition? Because touch isn't just physical, it's conceptual." He leaned forward, still careful of her space. "Your species' evolution linked touch with emotion so deeply that they became neurologically inseparable. Your condition emerged because your brain never learned to differentiate between physical sensation and emotional resonance." Understanding dawned. "You're trying to teach my brain the difference." "Exactly." He nodded toward the monitoring device. "Create enough alternative pathways and we can essentially reroute your primary sensory processing." For the next several days, they altered their approach. Instead of traditional meditation, Casimir guided her through elaborate sensory visualizations, experiences he called mind touch. They explored conceptual landscapes together: the pressure of ocean depths, the weightlessness of orbital freefall, the textured symphony of rain on different surfaces. After each session, her scans showed incremental changes, new neural connections, forming, alternative pathways developing. "It's working," Casimir confirmed on the 10th day, studying her latest results. "But more slowly than I'd hoped. We need to accelerate the process." "How?" He hesitated before answering. "By introducing controlled proximity challenges, gradually decreasing the safety distance while maintaining these new neural pathways." Fear flickered across her skin in patches of slate gray. "The risk is calculated," he finished. "We'll stop at the first sign of discomfort." After long consideration, she agreed. The following morning, they began what Casimir called proximity training. The safety boundary was reduced incrementally, first by centimeters, then by decimeters. On the third day of this new phase, the station's alarm system activated unexpectedly. Automated warnings announced a micrometeor strike had damaged environmental systems in their section. "We need to evacuate," Casimir said as emergency lighting bathed the room in crimson. Before either could move, the station shuddered violently. Lysandre lost her balance as the artificial gravity fluctuated. She fell forward, directly toward Casimir. Time seemed to slow as her mind registered the inevitable. Contact was seconds away. The impact never came. Casimir had moved with startling reflexes, simultaneously catching her and twisting away so that only his environmental suit's sleeve connected with her arm. Even through the protective material, Lysandre braced for agony, but felt only pressure, followed by a strange tingling sensation where contact had occurred. "Are you all right?" he asked, immediately releasing her once she had regained her balance. She stared at her arm in disbelief. "It didn't hurt." "The neuromodulation treatments," Casimir said, his expression mixing concern with cautious triumph. "They're working faster than anticipated." Before they could discuss further, The station's emergency system cycled to secondary protocols. All diplomatic personnel proceed to designated secure zones, announced the automated system. This is not a drill. They navigated the corridor together, maintaining minimal distance as other species rushed past them. Lysandre noticed Casimir subtly positioning himself as a buffer between her and the crowd. Ambassador Lysandre, called Orbital Director Mavith, appearing at an intersection ahead. The Council is convening an emergency session. Your presence is required immediately. The urgent meeting revealed the extent of the crisis. The micrometeor strike had damaged crucial systems, and repairs would require station-wide power reductions. More concerning were the political implications. Several species were already blaming security lapses, with humans receiving particular scrutiny as the newest Confederation members. This is precisely why admission standards exist, argued Telvoros, the Jotaki representative, mandibles clicking with agitation. Humans lack the technological sophistication to recognize the vulnerabilities they introduce. The impact trajectory suggests natural occurrence, not sabotage, Casimir countered calmly. And human shielding technology could have prevented this. Technology we've offered to share. The debate escalated until Lysandre intervened. This incident emphasizes precisely why human integration benefits us all. Their adaptive thinking complements our established protocols. Hours later, after temporary agreements had been reached, Lysandre and Casimir returned to her quarters to continue their discussion from the observation dome. Your defense was unexpected, he said as they settled in her reception area, environmental systems humming as they worked to stabilize the damaged station. It was diplomatic necessity, she replied, though her skin coloration suggested more complex motivations. The Confederation needs unity now, not division. And what about you? He asked, his gaze steady. What do you need? The question hung between them, laden with meaning beyond words. Finally, Lysandre spoke. To understand what happened during the evacuation. The contact. It should have been excruciating. Your neural pathways are adapting faster than my projections, Casimir explained. The emergency likely triggered accelerated integration of the new pathways we've been creating. So it's working, she said, a flicker of blue-white hope illuminating her skin. The treatment is actually working. Yes, but we need to proceed carefully. Your brain is essentially learning a new language for processing sensory information. He hesitated before continuing. There's something I haven't told you about why I requested this assignment. Lysandre's posture shifted slightly. I'm listening. My sister had a human condition called allodynia, where normal touch registers as pain. It's remarkably similar to your syndrome, just on a human neurological framework. He paused. She didn't survive. The isolation became too much. Understanding dawned. So this isn't just diplomacy for you. No, he admitted. It's personal, but that doesn't make the science any less valid. Lysandre considered this revelation. In most diplomatic contexts, such personal motivation would be considered compromising. Yet she found herself appreciating his honesty and the depth of commitment it revealed. Tomorrow, she said decisively, we continue the treatments and accelerate them. Ready? Casimir asked, his hand hovering 20 centimeters from Lysandre's outstretched palm. 3 days had passed since the station emergency. Their sessions had intensified, combining neural retraining with progressively closer proximity exercises. Lysandre's monitoring device displayed her vitals alongside neural pathway activity, both showing remarkable adaptation patterns. Ready, she confirmed, forcing steadiness into her voice despite the anxiety rippling across her skin in waves of pale gray. Casimir moved his hand closer, reducing the gap to 15 centimeters, then 10. At 5 centimeters, Lysandre's breath caught, but her pain indicators remained stable. Remember the ocean visualization, he instructed quietly. Focus on the sensory separation we practiced. She closed her eyes briefly, concentrating on the mental construct they had built together. Imagining touch as water, pain is merely one current within a vast ocean of possible sensations, one she could choose to navigate around rather than through. When she opened her eyes again, Casimir's fingertips were a whisper away from hers. "Last chance to stop," he said. Instead of answering, Lysandre moved forward, closing the final distance herself. Their fingertips connected. For an instant, her body went rigid, ancient neural pathways firing warnings of imminent pain. But then the new pathways asserted themselves. The expected agony transformed into something entirely different. Warmth, pressure, and a cascade of unfamiliar sensations that made her gasp. "What are you feeling?" Casimir asked, remaining perfectly still. "Everything," she whispered. "It's overwhelming, but not painful. Like discovering a new sense entirely." Carefully, he withdrew his hand. The monitors showed elevated activity across multiple neural regions, but no pain center activation. "Remarkable," he said, studying the readings. "Your brain is completely rerouting tactile processing through the new pathways we've established." A soft chime interrupted them. Lysandre's communication device signaling an incoming diplomatic message. She activated the display to find Mavith's concerned face. "Ambassador, the Confederation Council is requesting an update on the human admission deliberations," the orbital director reported. "Several members are expressing concerns about continued delays. Inform them that my recommendation will be delivered tomorrow," Lysandre replied, maintaining her professional composure despite the momentous breakthrough they had just achieved. "Final assessments are underway." After the communication ended, Casimir regarded her with curiosity. "You haven't decided yet?" "There are still questions to be answered," she said, her skin shifting to the deep indigo of contemplation. "Your species' technology offers tremendous benefits, but your motivations remain complex." "Like my personal reasons for helping you?" "Precisely." She studied him thoughtfully. "Human altruism is difficult for many Confederation species to comprehend. The concept of helping others without guaranteed reciprocal benefit seems evolutionarily counterintuitive." Casimir smiled slightly. "Yet here we are. You can touch another being without pain for the first time in your life. Does the complexity of my motivation diminish the value of that outcome?" The question struck at the heart of the philosophical debate surrounding human admission. Humans approached problems differently, their solutions often brilliant but unpredictable, their motivations layered with personal histories and emotional drives that other species found discomforting. "No," she finally answered. "It enhances it." Their session continued with additional contact exercises, palm touches, brief hand clasps, each carefully monitored and analyzed. By evening, Lysandre could maintain finger contact for nearly 30 seconds before neural fatigue required a break. As they concluded, Casimir presented her with a small device. "This continues the neuromodulation while you sleep. It should accelerate pathway stabilization." She accepted it, their fingers brushing in the exchange, a contact that would have been unthinkable mere weeks ago. The casual nature of the touch, more than the touch itself, left her momentarily speechless. "Tomorrow," Casimir said as he prepared to leave, "we should be able to attempt a real handshake." After he departed, Lysandre stood alone in her quarters, contemplating the enormity of what they had accomplished, and what it meant not just for her, but potentially for the future relationship between humans and the Confederation. She had entered this arrangement seeking diplomatic advantage and perhaps personal relief. Instead, she had discovered something far more profound, a fundamental challenge to assumptions her entire civilization had accepted as truth. If her condition could be overcome through human intervention, what other impossibilities might yield to their unorthodox approaches? The question lingered as she prepared her official recommendation to the Council. The Confederation Assembly Hall buzzed with anticipation as representatives from 27 advanced civilizations gathered for the human admission vote. Lysandre stood at the central podium, aware that her recommendation would likely determine the outcome. Casimir sat among the human delegation, his expression neutral, but his eyes finding hers across the chamber. That morning, they had achieved what once seemed impossible. A full handshake, maintained for over a minute without pain. The memory of it resonated through her still. The warmth of his palm against hers, fingers interlaced in the human custom, the strange textural differences between their species' skin. Esteemed representatives, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. For 600 cycles, the Confederation has expanded cautiously, admitting only those species whose development trajectories align with established parameters. Today, we consider a species that challenges our very understanding of those parameters. Murmurs rippled through the assembly as she continued. Humans achieved spaceflight remarkably recently by our standards. Their technological progression has been erratic rather than linear. Their societal structures remain diverse rather than unified. By traditional metrics, their candidacy would be premature. The Jotaki delegation clicked their approval, mandibles shifting in satisfied patterns. Several other conservative factions similarly indicated agreement. And yet, Lysandre continued, her skin shifting to a rarely seen shade of luminous silver. It is precisely these differences that constitute humanity's greatest offering to our collective. She gestured toward the massive view screen dominating the wall behind her. Permission to present personal testimony. The council arbiter inclined their crystalline form in assent, and the screen activated to display medical scans, Lysandre's neural patterns from before and after Casimir's treatment. As many of you know, I have lived my entire life with tactile hypersensitivity syndrome. For 217 cycles, our most advanced medical science deemed my condition permanent and untreatable. Her gaze swept the chamber. It took human intervention to prove that assessment wrong. Shocked murmurs erupted as delegates processed the implications. Maveth rose partially from his seat, confusion evident in his posture. Ambassador Lysandre, are you claiming the humans have cured your condition? I am claiming they questioned assumptions our civilization had accepted as immutable truth, she replied. And in doing so, they opened pathways previously unimagined. To demonstrate, she turned toward Casimir and extended her hand in invitation. Collective gasps echoed through the chamber as understanding dawned. Casimir approached the podium, maintaining diplomatic decorum but unable to entirely suppress his smile. When he reached her, he extended his hand in return. Their palms met. In full view of the assembly, no pain registered on Lysandre's features, only concentration, then growing wonder as the contact extended beyond any previous attempt. Her skin cycled through colors of emotion too complex for single interpretation, before settling into the clear azure of profound clarity. The human approach to problem-solving differs fundamentally from our own, she addressed the assembly, still maintaining contact with Casimir. Where we seek optimal solutions through established methodologies, they explore alternatives through intuitive leaps. Where we value consistency, they embrace adaptation. Where we see impossibility, they see challenge. She finally released Casimir's hand, turning to face the assembly fully. My recommendation is unconditional approval of human admission to the Confederation, with accelerated integration protocols. Their perspective is not merely valuable, it is essential to our continued evolution as a collective. The vote that followed was not unanimous, but the majority proved sufficient. As the session concluded, delegates approached Lysandre with questions about her treatment, and more importantly, about its implications for other permanent conditions throughout Confederation space. Later, as celebration commenced in the diplomatic reception hall, Lysandre found Casimir observing the proceedings from a quiet alcove. You used yourself as evidence, he noted when she joined him. That was unexpected. It was necessary, she replied. Abstract arguments would not have swayed the assembly. They needed to witness possibility manifested. And now, he asked, your treatment isn't complete. The neural pathways still require stabilization. Now, she said, we continue our work. Not just for me, but for others. Your sister's condition, allodynia, there must be others suffering similarly on Earth and beyond. There are, he confirmed. Thousands. Lysandre extended her hand toward him once more. not as demonstration now, but as choice. Then this is just the beginning. Casimir accepted her offered hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. In that moment of connection, something profound passed between them. Understanding beyond words. Possibility beyond imagining. For Lysandre, who had lived centuries believing her isolation was immutable destiny, the simple warmth of another's touch represented not just personal healing, but a fundamental shift in perspective. Limitations she had accepted as permanent had proven malleable. Barriers deemed insurmountable had been crossed. And in this revelation lay the true gift humanity brought to the stars. Not their technology or resources, but their relentless refusal to accept impossibility as the final answer. As the twin stars of the station cast their light across the celebration, Lysandre realized that her skin had settled into a color never before recorded in Valine medical literature, a luminescent gold-white signifying an emotional state beyond their existing lexicon. Perhaps, she thought as she felt Casimir's pulse against her palm, they would need to create a new word for it.